What we call the Way of Harmony is associated above all with Chinese civilization. Here, the starting point is similar to that of the other great Bronze Age river basin civilizations. According to traditional Chinese sources, urban civilization emerged in China sometime around 2070 before the Common Era in the Huanghe or Yellow River Valley. But we have no good archaeological evidence until roughly 1600 before the Common Era, the beginning of the Shang dynasty. The Shang led a fairly typical sacral monarchic civilization supported by irrigation agriculture and a tributary social formation in which the warlord state extracted rents, taxes, and forced labor from dependent peasant communities. Gradually, the society, which had worshipped a high god by the name of Shangdi, a name associated with the imperial title, became increasingly exploitative, practicing human sacrifice. One of the subject peoples to the west, the Chao, led a revolution around 1070 before the Common Era. The new dynasty was still sacral monarchic, but carried out land reform, restoring the 9-field system, in which the land of each village was divided into 9 parts, with 8 supporting the village and only 1 supporting the state, thereby limiting the rate of exploitation significantly. They also taught that the emperor ruled on the basis of the mandate of heaven, which, if he became unjust, he could lose, setting in motion another revolution. The Chao dynasty represented a kind of golden age in the memory of China, a time of justice and harmony. Soon, however, the emergence of specialized agriculture and petty commodity production led to growing inequality and to political fragmentation as competition over markets led local warlords to rebel against the Chao. This pattern, which corresponds roughly to the Axial Age transformations in China, is known in traditional Chinese historiography as the Spring and Autumn and Warring States periods. The first lasted between 771 and 476 before the Common Era, and the latter between 475 and 221 before the Common Era. There were a number of schools which emerged during this period. While they differed on many fundamentals, they were all focused in one way or another on restoring the lost harmony of the Chao dynasty. The first school was called Fajia, or legalism. The legalists taught that knowledge is limited to observation of facts and patterns of facts, and that human nature is intrinsically selfish. They rejected the idea of heaven or the divine, and taught that all morality is merely a convention. They believed that order can be maintained and that the state can prosper only by the use of force and or the rule of law. To this end, they counseled a strategy of de facto militarization and bureaucratization of the entire society. Everyone should have a rank and a function, and everyone was accountable to the emperor. Legalism played a major role in the development of the Qin dynasty, which ended the Warring States period and unified China. It was nominally discredited after this dynasty suppressed the other schools, but its influence remains in the structure of the Chinese state and in some aspects of later Confucian thought. The second major school was Mojia, or Moism. Mozi taught that knowledge is based on experience, but also on inference from experience, the most developed and incipient empirical scientific worldview, though they also believed in an anthropomorphic and personal God who commands Mo-ai, or universal love. They rejected ritual and preferred simplicity and service to the poor. Moism did not survive as an independent school or tradition, but contributed significantly to the development of science and technology in China. The third major school was Rujia, or Confucianism. Confucius taught that knowledge comes from observation and reason, but also from meditation. There was an ongoing debate within the tradition around the relative importance of the investigation of things, or science, and reflection on self, or meditation. Confucianism absorbed most of its scientific ideas from Taoism, but it stressed that the universe is an organic system developing from and evolving towards a first principle, understood as Tian, or heaven, or Tai Chi, the great ultimate, which is knowable by reason. The knowledge of heaven leads to the 5 virtues: Ren, or benevolence; Yi, or justice; Li, or propriety; Xin, or fidelity; and Zi, or wisdom. And the practice of these virtues leads to a just society and the development of individuals into superior persons and eventually into sages. The Confucian strategy for restoring harmony in China centered around the promotion of virtue and justice by study for those who are able and participation in ritual for those who are not. They sought to create sage kings who rule in service to the people, or, failing that, to have wise and just scholars advise the rulers. Daojia, or Taoism, the final school, shares many basic concepts with the Confucian tradition, but interprets them very differently. First of all, they believe that the Tao, which for them is the first principle, is not knowable, and that any attempt to capture its nature in language will lead inevitably to profound misunderstanding and to a distorted way of life. Because of this, they believe that the Confucian emphasis on ritual and the focus on civilizational progress leads to an imbalance, and they focus instead on restoring harmony with the Tao, particularly in relation to the natural world. This was expressed for many of them by working within the system to balance Confucian influences. They focused on alchemy and medicine to foster health and on the day-to-day needs of the people. They advised rulers to follow the Tao and to try to avoid control and instead to use their adversaries' force against them. For others, it led to a withdrawal from urban civilization in order to live in harmony with the nature, or even to support for peasant rebellions. Ultimately, the Confucian and Taoist traditions began to flow together and to integrate elements of Buddhism. The result was the Tao Jue, generally referred to in English as the Neo-Confucian synthesis, which drew on Taoism as a technology for health and mental well-being, Confucianism as a strategy for social justice, and Buddhism as a strategy for enlightenment. The synthesis is best expressed in Zhao Dunyi's mysterious explanation of the diagram of the Great Ultimate. All these traditions share a common concern for harmony, which continues to be reflected in the Communist Party of China's focus on building a harmonious, socialist, spiritual civilization.